In our tradition, Apsaras are the most beautiful women, and they have some connection with water, and they move like water. They have that very fluidy nature and very beautiful women. Similarly, in the Greek tradition, there is this Aphrodite, as you would say in the English language, in the anglicized version. She's Aphrodite. That's how you pronounce her name in the Greek tradition. Aphrodite. Apsu udite. Up means water in the Sanskrit language and in the Greek language. So she was a beautiful lady born out of water nymph, she is called. So similar sounding names and similar sounding tradition, right? Just like we have a god for love, Madana, Manmata, Mara, Pradyumna, etc. He is called by many different names. They also have a god for love who is Eros. He also has arrows. He shoots arrows of love. Just like our Manmata is supposed to have 5 floral arrows. And shooting each one of them invigorates the person. It motivates the person to fall in love, and it intensifies the love between the man and the woman, etc.
Shri Arjun Bharadwaj is an author, researcher and a translator. Shri Arjun has co-written, translated many books and authored over 50 research articles related to classical literature, arts, philosophy and science. He is well versed in Sanskrit, Kannada, English, German, Greek languages and holds a master's degree in robotics from Switzerland. Shri Arjun is also a visiting faculty at many universities and educational institutions. Tune into this eye-opening podcast about Sanskrit, brought to you exclusively by Prana Stories. Please like, comment and subscribe to Prana Stories for more of such original content.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Arjun, sir, it's so, I feel so honored and privileged. Welcome to Prana Stories. And my house keeps getting better and better because so many scholars keep coming to my home studio. It's so, the Thirukkural, it's like punya sigute. Like my house is getting all the blessings of all people who are there. I know of you. Whatever I have known of you, you're like a scholar of languages. Like you are a scholar of Sanskrit. You are a scholar of Greek, German, all these languages which are there. So when people say if something is not understandable, they say don't speak Greek and Latin to me. But you have mastered that also. So I don't know what to say. So we can start off with the topic of Sanskrit itself, because that is of keen interest of me. What I wanted to start off straight away as a topic is, to me, I know Sanskrit is like a Dev Bhasha, which is the language of the gods. So how did it happen that when people were there, like let's take for ease of conversation's sake, let's say 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, when the Vedas started happening, and the Vedas were written in the language of Sanskrit, that's probably a later part when it was actually written. But before that, what were common people speaking, right? I also see, because I also spoke to a lot of folk traditionalists. They were saying that, what I understood is that there were a lot of folk traditions, but Sanskrit is such a refined language, right? So I can understand why it is called as the language of the gods. Now, how did this evolve? Did this evolve out of these folk languages, or did it just, you can just throw light on that, just the history of Sanskrit. Can we start with that?
Sure. Namaste. It's a great pleasure and a privilege being with you, Praveenji. I have watched many of your videos on the Prana Stories channel, and I have been greatly benefited through them. My pleasure being here with you. And a very nice question and a fantastic topic to start with. So the earliest treatise or earliest literary work or earliest spiritual text available in the world is claimed to be the Rig Veda, which at least dates to the 5000 BC. So the Rig Veda, by the way, it was not written by a person. So in the Indian tradition, the Vedas are believed to be apaurusheyas.
Meaning?
So the word apaurusheya can be understood in many different ways. First of all, it can mean that it is not written by a single Purusha. It is the community consciousness, the community learning, which has been documented that way in the Vedas. So that's one way of looking at it. So the second way of looking at it is
So it
that
is not patented to anyone.
absolutely not. Absolutely. See, in India, we have no concept of patenting.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll address that
Later.
point later on
Yeah.
at some point through our conversation. Secondly, it also means that it is a divine revelation. It is a superhuman revelation. It is a revelation which transcends the material sphere. So that is another meaning of the word apaurusheya. So there is this divine intervention, or one other aspect in the Indian tradition is that we don't have the tendency of claiming that we originated, we humans created something, or it is a product of our mind. So that beating one's own drums or blowing one's own trumpet has never been the nature of the Indian seers, poets, scholars, etc. So they attribute everything to the divine, to the divine revelation. So apaurusheya can have these different sets of meanings. Firstly, a revelation from the divine, from the supernatural, or that's something which has been documented out of the community consciousness. So already back there in the Rig Veda, so the 4 Vedas, like most of us are aware, are the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. Long back, even before the Rig Veda took its current form, it is said that the Vedas were actually one body of knowledge.
Okay.
And a great seer, a scholar called Krishna Dvaipayana, he reorganized the Vedas into 4, and therefore he got the title, the name Veda Vyasa. Vyasa itself means to reorganize, reclassify,
Compiler,
divide,
basically.
compile, etc. So he's called Veda Vyasa because he did that activity of reorganization of the Vedas into 4. So back in the Rig Veda itself, we see the Sanskrit Bhasha being used. And there we see that the language has taken quite a sophisticated structure, not just in terms of the grammar, but also in terms of the metrical pattern which is used. And also not just the language, but the thoughts of the people, as we see in the Rig Veda, as documented in the Rig Veda, is very profound already in 5000 BC. So the Vedas would not have been realized overnight. So there must have been a few thousands of years before that, a few thousand years before that, a few millennia before that, where the language would have taken time to arrive at this beautiful, sophisticated structure. And the thoughts of humans also to attain this kind of spiritual heights. When I say spiritual, it doesn't mean that the Indians had ignored the material. Both the material and the spiritual went hand in hand in India at all times. So there must have been a few millennia. Indians must have existed. They surely existed, the Bharatiyas. And all this contemplation about the material aspects of life, the spiritual aspects of life, that was constantly there for sure. And by speaking with each other as a community, the sculpting of the language would also have happened to come to the stage as we see it in the Rig Veda. And the other 4 Vedas, of course. And then in the later textual tradition of the Sanskrit language, the Sanskrit Bhasha, we do see the language structures, the grammar of the language taking an even more sophisticated form. We see the evolution of the language. And by the time of the Ramayana, especially by the time of the Ramayana, we see that the language is being used in a very nuanced, in a very creative manner to create the Adi Kavya, the first poetic work. So the aspect of poetry was first realized in India, the creative usage of language.
Okay.
Right? So back in about, say, loosely put, by about 4000 BC, if we assume that the sage Valmiki Maharshi lived, by then already the language was so sophisticated that in addition to the technical purpose that it might serve, the Shastric purpose it might serve, the Indians had also realized that it can have its creative purpose as well. You may sculpt a language to put out emotions and stories and poems through the language. So we see the Sanskrit language evolving.
Evolve like that. So
Certainly.
are you saying now when whatever I have read from even the Vedas it describes Bharata or Bharatavarsha like covered by mountains on the top,
Yes.
ocean in the at the bottom, and there is a description of this, and we have that intention mantra also, which is Sankalpa mantra.
Yes.
Bharatavarshe,
Absolutely.
Bharatakande,
Yes.
and all that, right?
Yes.
So it gives a geographical description
Absolutely.
of Bharata as such, which
Exactly.
is again later on, people say the British are the ones who united India, which is completely,
Definitely
false,
not.
because it's in the intention mantra itself we have the
Right.
definition of Bharata.
Absolutely.
Now my question is, you say the language was already there, and then it sort of was already it was community based, and this also came from, like, it's something apaurushaya, which is by the divine, or the multiple meanings to it, and then the Vedas got compiled, and then the first kavya, which is the Ramayana. So parallelly on the other parts of the world, didn't anything else exist at the same time? Because I see that lot of these other epics of Greeks, like because you have also written about the Greek epics and all that, like the Iliad and the Odyssey and all that. When was that written?
Right.
Was it later, or was it at the same time, or how was it like?
Yeah, there are quite a few things to discuss at this point.
Sure.
To answer your question. So firstly, the place where the Vedas were realized or compiled or documented in the oral tradition as well as in the textual tradition, that region is loosely called the Brahmavarta.
Okay.
So that lies between the river Saraswati, the river Saraswati, and the river Sindhu. So that is the Sindhu-Saraswati civilization. So the river Saraswati originated in the Himalayas, and it joined the Sindhu Sagara, which is today called Bay of the Arabian Sea.
Okay.
So that was in the ancient times, it was called the Sindhu Sagara. So it used to join there. And the river Sindhu, which is today popularly called Indus, so that is even today flowing.
And that's where the name Hindu came.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't
Sa
pronounce.
and Ha. So that's one of the theories for the occurrence of the name Hindu.
Okay.
And the Indus is also a corrupt form of the word Sindhu. So that is, and that's how the word India also came from the word Indus. So there are many theories related to that. But what's more interesting is that between these two rivers, the people, the Indians or the Bharatiyas, the Sanatana Dharmis, they resided in that region. It was called the Brahmavarta. And once the river Saraswati started drying up. So the drying up of the river Saraswati happened due to several tectonic changes, changes in the plates of the Indian subcontinent and the Eurasian plate. So like most of us know, even geologically, India was an island in the past, long back, several millions of years back.
Okay.
So India merged, it collided into the Eurasian plate and it merged into the Eurasian plate and it became a part of this continent
the
of
current
Asia.
Asia.
So because of that collision of the Indian island with the Eurasian plate, the Himalayan mountains were born in the first place.
Okay.
See, that is why the Himalaya mountains are called the young-fold mountains. They are young in the sense that the other mountain ranges, such as the Vindhyas and the Satpuras, which are in India, they are old-found mountains. They were part of the Indian island, even when India was an island.
Which was already there.
So when this island of India collided with Eurasia, that is when the Newfound mountains, the Himalayas, were born. And all these rivers started flowing from there. The Saraswati, the Sindhu, the Ganga, etc. So back in the past, the Shatadru, which is Satluj, and an other river, which is the Yamuna, used to feed into the river Saraswati. So that is what research has shown. So these two were tributaries of the river Saraswati, and the river Saraswati flowed from the Himalayas and joined the Sindhu Sagara, the Arabian
Just
Sea.
to clarify, the Saraswati River were like the northwestern frontier of today's India, right?
Right.
Somewhere in Pakistan, Afghanistan.
No. It flowed through the heartland of India.
Okay.
It flowed through the regions of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and through regions of Gujarat. Saraswati, the river Saraswati.
Okay.
See, even today, the river Saraswati flows. It originates near the Badrikashrama.
Okay.
If you go ahead from the Badri Narayana temple, you encounter this Vyasa Guha, a cave called Vyasa Guha. That is where Vyasa is supposed to have written the Mahabharata. In fact, the cave itself looks like a series of manuscripts
Oh.
arranged over each other.
Okay.
And the river Saraswati actually flows even today there
Okay.
for a few kilometers, for about 20-30 kilometers it flows.
Okay.
And it joins the river Alakananda in a place called Keshava Prayaga.
Okay.
So that meeting place of the river Saraswati and Alakananda is called Keshava Prayaga.
Okay.
And then later on, Alakananda joins Bhagirathi, and Bhagirathi later flows down as Ganga.
Ganga.
So today, in a sense, the river Saraswati has become a tributary of Ganga. It is contributing waters to Ganga.
Right.
So this is after the tectonic changes. The tectonic changes themselves happened in the pre-Mahabharata era.
Okay.
So in the Mahabharata itself, we have evidence for the river Saraswati drying up.
Okay.
So Balarama, in the Mahabharata, we get to know that he went on a Tirtha Yatra. So while he was going to different rivers and to different kshetras, he comes across the river Saraswati as well. And then he recollects that I know from my ancestors that this was a very mighty river, a very glorious river, and I see that it is drying up. So the Mahabharata contains evidence for that. So the river Saraswati dried up because the two feeding rivers, Yamuna and Shatadru, they diverged their course.
Okay.
Yamuna started joining Ganga, like it does in Mahaprayaga today, the Prayagraj, and Shatadru, which is Sutlej, today has become a tributary of Indus.
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons for the drying up of the river Saraswati.
Okay.
So, anyway, coming back, once the river Saraswati dried up largely, by the way, before I even go forward, the width of the river Saraswati, at certain points, it is said to be 10 kilometers. The width of the river.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was almost like a gigantic sea, inland sea within the land.
Yeah.
In fact, there have been many scholars who have undertaken research with respect to the river Saraswati. They have traced the course of the river Saraswati. Even today, if you dig a well along wherever the Saraswati flowed, I hear that you get very rich source of water and minerals in those places.
Wow.
See, even today, if you go to Kashi, you can actually see that the width of the river Ganga is at least a kilometer.
Yeah, it is.
Right? So you can imagine like 15,000-20,000 years back, this mighty river was very huge in flowing.
Right.
So once the river Saraswati dried up or started drying up, the people who inhabited the region, the Brahmavarta region, the realization, the Veda Bhumi, the place where the Vedas were realized, some set of people, they started migrating into the heartland of India, what we today see as the heartland of India, that is the Ganga-Yamuna basin. Certain other people started migrating away from this land.
Okay.
So they are the ones who occupied the ancient part of Iran and also moved until the Greek, the Greece land, the land of Greece.
So this is that out of India kind of theory, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the reality, not just a theory.
Okay.
Yeah. So there
is evidence for it.
Lot of evidence.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of this talk, we can even include a slide where we give all the reference material for this, or even in the comment of the videos I can give them.
Yeah.
Right. So we see a lot of similarities between language structures, the thoughts, and the poetry of the Greeks and the Indians. There is a lot of similarity. See, for instance, let me just give certain linguistic similarities.
Yeah.
The word asti in the Sanskrit Bhasha means to be. Edat pustakam asti. Asti. So that becomes estin in the Greek language.
Okay.
Asti becomes estin, to be. It becomes est in the Latin language. And it becomes ist in German. And that becomes is in English.
Okay.
So it is the same asa bhuvi dhatu. So every Sanskrit word has a dhatu, the root word, the root form.
Wow.
That has given rise to the word asti in the Sanskrit Bhasha, and that has become estin in the Greek language, and it has become is in the English language today.
Right.
So we can trace that evolution of language or the manner in which language changed across time and across geography.
Nice.
Similarly, there are these very obvious similarities. Matra and mother in English, right?
Yeah.
So that is metera in the Greek language, mater in the Latin language, mutter in Old German and Modern German as well, and mother.
Yeah.
And similarly, pitra, peteras in the Greek language, pater in Latin, and fater in German, and father in English.
Yeah.
In all these relationship terms, brother, bratra, daughter, and duhitra, swasra, sister, etc. All these relationship terms, you see that most of them end with the r as the swara in the Sanskrit Bhasha, that becomes the ra in the Western languages. So mother, father, brother, sister, daughter,
Yeah.
etc. So that similarity.
All these have similarities.
Yeah. So all of them are cognates of each other.
Yeah.
It is not just out of coincidence that people in India and Europe came up with similar sounding terms. So there is certainly this linguistic continuity. There is certainly this cultural continuity between India and the West. Ancient India, ancient Bharat and the West. Right. So now, while this is about the languages, many of the belief systems, many of the ritualistic traditions, the stories in the Greek mythology, the Puranic stories in Greek, they have a lot of similarity with the Indian tradition,
mythology.
the stories in the Indian tradition. So incidentally, one of my latest books is on Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Okay.
We find so much of similarity between Vyasa, Valmiki and Homer in their vision of what constitutes dharma, what constitutes global values, what constitutes societal values, the values of a family, between the husband and wife, between parents and children. The kind of vision that Vyasa and Valmiki have given in their Mahabharata and the Ramayana, similar is the vision followed by Homer in his Iliad and Odyssey.
Okay.
So that is what I have tried to explore.
Okay.
And also the linguistic structure, the creative usage of language, and the different kinds of figures of speech that we find in Homeric epics is something very close to what we find in the Sanskrit tradition, incidentally. And to just take an example of the name of the greatest of the Greek gods. Today, in the anglicized form, we can call him Zeus. But in the Greek language, he is called Dyaus. His name is written as Delta Epsilon Upsilon Sigma. Dyaus.
Okay.
In the Sanskrit language, Dyaus is a reference to the Svargaloka. That is how the word Deva has also originated.
Okay.
So the greatest god in the Greco-Roman tradition is called Dyaus, and that word itself means the Svargaloka or something which is bright, or it also means the divinity in the Indian languages, in the Indian tradition, right? And it's from the word Dyaus, the word Dio. Dionysius, Dio, etc. And that is how the word divine has also originated in the Western tradition.
Correct.
So the divine, Deva, Daiva, etc. The words that we have in India.
Okay.
Similarly, just one other example. In our tradition, Apsaras are the most beautiful women, and they have some connection with water, and they move like water. They have that very fluidy nature and very beautiful women. Similarly, in the Greek tradition, there is this Aphrodite, as you would say in the English language, in the anglicized version. She's Aprodite. That's how you pronounce her name in the Greek tradition. Aprodite.
Okay.
Apsu udite. Up means water in the Sanskrit language and in the Greek language.
Okay.
So she was a beautiful lady born out of water. Water nymph.
Wow.
She is called. So similar sounding names and similar sounding tradition. Right? Just like we have a god for love, Madana, Manmatha, Mara, Pradyumna, etc. He is called by many different names.
Right.
They also have a god for love who is Eros. He also has arrows. He shoots arrows of love.
Arrows, yeah.
Just like our Manmatha is supposed to have 5 floral arrows. And shooting each one of them invigorates the person. It motivates the person to fall in love, and it intensifies the love between the man and the woman, etc. So similar is the nature of the arrows of this Cupid in the Greek tradition, who is called Eros. So there are a lot of similarities between stories, between in terms of values and in terms of the thought process, etc.
Okay.
So this is not just merely
timeline wise, are they parallel or did they come later?
So Homer lived definitely after the 100 BC.
Okay.
After 100 BC.
After 100 BC.
So probably he lived in about 850 or 800, or latest by 500 BC. He lived in Greece.
Whereas we are talking about
Ramayana is at least, it belongs to 4000 BC.
BC, yeah.
And Mahabharata, the date of the war has been established through multiple sources of streams of evidence. So it happened at least about 3500 BC, 3340, something like that. The date also has been given. And the Vedas are much prior to that, much older to that.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time Homer came, we had at least 4,000 years of Indian civilization,
correct.
Minimum 4,000 years. But like I said in the beginning,
and this all can be proved by geology, by astronomical events,
yes,
and with
by literary evidence,
and
archaeological
also
evidence.
carbon dated material evidence.
Absolutely.
Also, right? This also everything can be proved.
Absolutely.
And there are proofs available online, materials available, everything.
Exactly.
We are not just doing like a WhatsApp university here.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No, I just wanted to make it clear to the audience that we are not talking anything from WhatsApp university.
It's not just whims and fancies that we are speaking about. Well researched.
With evidences,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's come back to Sanskrit itself. That now Ramayana was the first kavya that was written. So my question still remains that I'm sure there are other folk languages that were existing. Who was speaking Sanskrit? Was it only the people who are rishis, or the the priestly class, or the Brahmins, or the Kshatriyas, or who was actually speaking Sanskrit? So if the characters in Ramayana was Lord Ram and Sita and all, were they speaking Sanskrit? Or people in Mahabharata, the characters, were they speaking Sanskrit? Or who was the one who was speaking Sanskrit?
Very interesting question, a very important one to be addressed as well. See, in fact, because you have brought in the question about the language spoken in the Ramayana itself, in fact, the Ramayana itself answers the question.
Okay.
So when Hanuman goes to the Ashokavana and finds Sita there, he suspects that lady who is very lean and who's wearing very soiled clothes and whose cheeks are full of tears and who seems to have been worn out, etc. But still he finds that internal brilliance in her. So this must be Sita, he thinks. And he sits on the top of what is called a Shimshupa Vriksha, and he thinks about the language in which he must address her.
Okay.
So that is for the first time we hear the word Samskrita. Should I use the very cultured language of the human? Shall I address her with that?
Okay.
Or shall I use some other language to speak to her? He contemplates upon that point.
Okay.
See, by the way, another important point to note also is that when did this particular language get the name Sanskritam is very difficult to say.
Yeah.
It is just referred to as Bhasha by Panini. Panini is one of the great grammarians of India. Before him also there were quite a few grammarians. But the earliest and the most concrete treatise that we get is today in its complete form is of Panini. His Vyakarana Sutras. Anyway, so there itself in the Ramayana we see that there were multiple languages. The awareness of multiple languages we get to know from the Ramayana itself.
Okay.
And then in a fantastic treatise called the Natya Shastra, by the way, many people have the mistaken notion that the Natya Shastra is a book on dance. That is one aspect of Natya Shastra, but it's a fantastic treatise on all performing arts, on all kinds of creative endeavors that human beings can take. So it also discusses poetry, the kinds of figures of speech, etc. And it speaks about the different kinds of languages that can be employed in a drama. So the treatise is at least about 2,500 years old. Some people date it even to about 4,000 years, 4,000 years ago from now. So to about 2000 BC. But more practically, it was composed somewhere between 500 and BC and 500 AD. 500 in the common era.
There is a podcast on that, specifically on Natya Shastra, which we have made. If people have not watched it, they should go watch it.
That's a fantastic one, by the way. I loved it.
Guru Shobha has spoken very in a layman terms, what does it actually mean? Natya Shastra is a audio-visual Shastra.
Exactly.
Because Vedas were not understood by people.
The common people.
They wanted to make Natya Shastra, which is like a more audio-visual, which includes dance, music and everything, to make people understand the same concepts. That was Natya Shastra.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. Go on, sir.
Yeah. So there, well, like you said, audio-visual aspect. So through the entertainment medium, you're trying to convey the values of the Vedas,
Yeah.
right? Values of the Indian tradition of the Sanatana Dharma.
Enlightenment through entertainment.
Entertainment, absolutely. That's a very beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Right? So there, in the auditory part of the Natya Shastra, which deals with the verbal expression, that is where we find many different kinds of prakrits being mentioned by the sage Bharata.
What is prakrit?
So prakrits are what one can loosely put as the Desha Bhashas.
Okay.
The regional languages, the languages which are spoken in different regions. So Marga Bhasha is that common unifying factor, which is the Sanskrit Bhasha or just Bhasha. The other spoken dialects are the Prakrit languages.
Okay.
So he identifies many different kinds of Prakrits. See, now to just give a parallel example, I'm a Kannada speaker.
Yeah.
So there is one standardized Kannada throughout Karnataka.
Yes.
Which is the written form of the Kannada language.
Correct.
Which is used in the newspapers, which is used in the news channels, etc. But then, in different regions of Karnataka, they speak the Kannada language very differently.
Yes.
In North Karnataka, in the Dharwad region, they speak in a certain way. In the Raichur region, they speak in a certain different way.
The dialects
are
different.
In the Mangalore region, they speak in a different way. In the old Mysore region, they speak in a quite different manner. And across the cross-section of the society, we see that the language is used and spoken in several different ways.
Yes.
Right? So, people who are in the business sector, they speak Kannada in a certain fashion.
Yeah.
People who are agriculturists, they have a certain kind of dialect.
Yeah.
Right? People who are settled in the urban landscapes, they have a different kind of dialect. Yeah. All of that is Kannada. But there is one unifying, standardized Kannada.
That is textbook language.
Yeah, textbook language. And also a sophisticated form of Kannada, one would say. The best aspects of all these, the regional dialects have kind of gotten unified there.
Right.
One can loosely put it
as an
way.
example, yes.
Yeah. So similarly, Sanskrita is that common feature or the common ancestor out of which many of these Prakrits were born. So, when did the birth of Prakrits happen? Probably they were already present by the time of the Rigveda itself. Right? And it has been formally seen in the Ramayana. It has been seen in the Natya Shastra and several other texts after that.
Yeah.
Right? See, Bharata, mentions many Prakrits. And one other important point to note is that all the Sanskrita Natakas that we speak about, Nataka, Prakarana, the different kinds of plays in the Sanskrit language, incidentally, they are not monolinguistic, as in they don't have only one language within them. Every Sanskrit play has multiple Prakrits.
Oh, okay.
See, for example, there is this fantastic Prakarana, a social play called Mruchakatika, written by a playwright called Shudraka.
Okay.
He lived in the early centuries of the Common Era, early 80s, early centuries of the Common Era. So, Shudraka, in his Mruchakatika, it is said that he has used at least 14 different Prakrits, 14 different spoken varieties.
Wow.
So, Samskrita, the Sanskrit language, is spoken by certain characters. Different characters speak different forms of Prakrits.
Okay.
See, just take a Bollywood movie.
Right.
Although Bollywood movies are made in Hindi, it's not the same dialect of Hindi that the different characters are speaking.
Correct.
A character who originates from Bihar speaks that particular dialect.
Correct.
A person who originates from Rajasthan, who plays a role in the movie as a Rajasthani character, he speaks that particular dialect.
Yeah.
Right? So similar was the Sanskrit play. So Samskrita and the Prakritas, they coexisted. Right? And incidentally, in the Natya Shastra, Bharata identifies something called the Dakshinatya Prakrita.
Okay.
And among the Dakshinatya Prakritas, he also identifies something called the Dravida Prakrita.
Okay.
Dravida Prakrita constitutes the South Indian languages today.
Okay.
By the way, the word Dravida, scholars say that one of the etymological roots of the word Dravida is from Drumila. Okay. Druma means a tree.
Okay.
Drumila means a place or a region where there's an overgrowth of trees or thickly vegetated by trees.
Okay.
So that region, the South India, was called the Drumila Pradesha because a lot of dense, thick forests were found in South India.
Okay.
So from the word Drumila, the word Dravida has come. And the becoming the, that has, the Dravida has led to the rise of Tamila and Tamil. So the word Tamil also can trace its roots to the Sanskrit word Drumila.
Okay.
And that has been recognized as one of the Prakrits, the Desha Bhasha variant of the Sanskrit Bhasha.
Okay.
Back in the Natya Shastra.
So then that you're sort of busting that myth that Tamil is the oldest language, and
Certainly.
there are many, again, it's the politics around it,
Right.
that Sanskritam came out of Tamil. And so some people, I also read that when you said Apaurusheya, the Sanskrit language came out of that Apaurusheya, and Tamil also came out of that Apaurusheya. It's like parallel. It's not even saying, origin kind of a thing. But you are saying that it was a Prakrit language geographically placed in the southern part of India.
Right.
And that there are books that say that languages like Malayalam, Kannada, and even Telugu all came out of Tamil. Is that so, or like what is it? It's like I according to what you're saying, Telugu is also a Prakrit language.
Yes.
Malayalam is also a Prakrit language, which has similarity to these things. I mean, Malayalam also has a lot of Sanskritized words, right? Kannada also has a lot of Sanskritized words, right? Because today, when I'm reading a lot of slokas, for me it is easy to read because I know Kannada. I don't know, I am not very well versed with the Devanagari Hindi script. I am very comfortable with Kannada, and it's so easy to read that. So I know that Sanskrit is actually part of Kannada, or Kannada is part of Sanskrit. It's like that. It's like very much integrated. But
so if you remove Sanskrit Bhasha, Sanskrit from Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam or Telugu today, they lose their identity. The languages cannot even exist without the Sanskrit Bhasha. It has gotten so integrated with the South Indian language.
Right. But somehow I feel Tamil, the way things are written, there are lesser similarities between Sanskrit. That's the argument that they hold. See, this is different. So how do you sort of address that?
See, from what I understand, although I'm not a Tamil scholar, from the ancient treatises, the Sangam literature, or many of the ancient treatises, the Tirupavai, etc., in the Tamil language, you find that Tamil Nadu definitely constituted the cultural aspect of India. Rather, it's that unified Indian, the Sanatana Dharma, which is definitely reflected in the Tamil works as well. And most of the Tamil words popularly used, they are apabhramshas of the Samskrita Moolapadas.
Okay.
The terms in the Sanskrit language, the corrupt forms are... Corruption happens in many different ways, right? A word, for example, Krishna, it becomes Kanhaya in North India. It becomes Kanna in Tamil Nadu. It becomes Kitta in Kannada in certain places, right? So the manner in which a term can undergo corruption or can undergo some kinds of modifications is hard to predict.
Yeah, it's like flavors of regions.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, definitely the ancient Tamil, many scholars, in fact, one can refer to the works of Dr. R. Nagaswamy, Padmabhushan Dr. R. Nagaswamy.
Okay.
At the end of this discussion, maybe I'll give you all the references. So like that, there are many scholars who have shown that Tamil is very much has received a lot from the Sanskrit language. So today, Tamil cannot be separated from Sanskrit. That is one thing. Now, in terms of antiquity, it's very obvious that nothing as old as the Rigveda or the Ramayana or the Mahabharata is found in Tamil.
Tamil language, okay.
Whether it is Kamban's Ramayana or the later literature, it is inspired from the Sanskrit tradition. That is also very obvious. But now, to add another technical point here, it is also true in some sense that the South Indian languages have a slightly different structure compared to the North Indian languages.
Right.
So the North Indian language structure, the syntax and the structure of the North Indian languages is also closer to the Sanskrit language. But here in South India, the vocabulary and the tradition, that is of course very close to the Pan-Indian tradition, but language structure is slightly different. See, it's like saying the common Indian sari. It is worn in a certain manner in Karnataka, certain other manner in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
Within Karnataka, in the Coorg region, it is worn in a certain
Separate
way.
yeah.
Different communities of people wear it in certain different ways. In Gujarat, it is worn in a different manner. And in Maharashtra and in Bengal, it is worn in a different manner. It's the same sari.
Yeah.
But the manner in which you wear it is different, and each way of wearing is beautiful
Right.
in its own sense.
Right.
You might have the same raw materials, but you might come up with different kinds of cooked dishes. So similarly, the raw material for the South Indian languages and the raw North Indian languages are the same. But the manner in which they have evolved is slightly different. There is a difference of flavor between the North Indian and South Indian languages. Nobody can deny that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then it's actually funny that after the British came to India, many historians have said that it is the British that united India, because India was all scattered in different flavors and different languages and all that. There were different regions, different kings. British were the one who united India, and they named it India. That's the kind of
in fact, they divided India. We know that
exactly
from history.
No, but then this is the theory that is there, that we all, yes, we are speaking English right now, that this is the language that binds us. Because we are speaking English, right?
Very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Yes.
Actually, it's not a very badge of honor.
Right.
I would say it's not a badge of honor that I'm saying, because it is used for the sake of communication. I'm doing it. Right? Because the audience that are listening to it are all from different regions, from north, from south, and all that. It's unfortunate that I realize that, since you also mentioned the usage of Prakrit, which is the local dialects, but they used Sanskrit so that there is a commonality in all of this, so that people understand a common language. So I would say Sanskrit was our common language.
Yes,
right? This already proves that Sanskrit actually was our common language. And okay, now let me come to that question. Now we have this beautiful tradition of writing kavyas, mahabharatas, and all these things were going on. Now Prakrits were already existing also. Sanskrit also was existing as a refined literary language. Where did we lose it? Right? Where did that completely just got divided? But the Prakrits are still remaining. Kannada is remaining, Tamil is remaining, but that commonality has gone away. The commonality is probably today replaced by English, or probably, again, the politics around it, that Hindi is being replaced with that. So where did we lose this whole thing of commonality? Can you throw some light on that?
It's a very good question. There are multiple strands here again to answer this. Before I answer your question, let me also add a couple of more things.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Samskrita and the Prakritas, they coexisted in Sanskrit drama. And just like there were many kavyas and many Shaastras being written in the Sanskrit Bhasha, parallelly, we also find several Prakrit kavyas also being written.
Right.
A work which was bigger than the Mahabharata was composed in what is called the Paishachi Prakrita by a person called Gunadhya, who lived somewhere in the Vindhya ranges, the mountain ranges. He belonged to that province. So that regional Prakrit dialect was called Paishachi Prakrita. He wrote this huge work called Bruhat Katha. It is a compilation of all the stories around India. So one can call it the popular folklore, a compilation of popular folklore stories of those days, very loosely put.
Language of Paishachya.
Paishachi Prakrita, it is called.
I have never heard of this.
Yeah. Today, unfortunately, that original work is lost. This Paishachi Prakrita's Bruhat Katha was translated into Sanskrit by many scholars of the later day. So one of the works which is available in that domain is Katha Sarit Sagara by Somadeva. Similarly, there is another work called Kshemendra's Bruhat Katha Manjari, which is again a reflection, a Sanskrit reflection of a Prakrit original. Similarly, there is another work called Buddhaswami's Bruhat Katha Shloka Sangraha. See, what I'm trying to address here is that there was give and take between Prakrit and Sanskrit largely since times immemorial.
It's always coexistence.
Exactly. Just like Kamban got inspired from the Sanskrita Ramayana to write his Tamil Ramayana, Tulsi Das got inspired to write
Ramcharit.
the Ramcharitamānasa in this Avadi, the dialect, the Prakrit, Avadi dialect, to write his Tulsi Ramayana. And similarly, the Andhra poets, the three poets, they got inspired to write the Andhra Mahabharata in the Telugu language based on the Mahabharata. Similarly, Prakrit works were later compiled in the Sanskrit language. And it is from the Brihatkatha tradition that the Panchatantra originate. The Panchatantra has its roots in the Brihatkatha tradition, the Prakrit Moola.
Okay.
The Hitopadesha has its roots there. And Vikram or Betala Panchavimshati, it has its roots in the Brihatkatha tradition.
Wow.
Similarly, there is this set of stories called Simhasana Dvatrimshika, where when the king is ascending the throne, he has to listen to the stories told by puppets or dolls on either sides of the throne and answer questions regarding administration and all that. And only then he can ascend the throne and sit on the throne.
Okay.
And incidentally, the Greek Aesop fables also have their roots in the Brihatkatha tradition.
Wow.
The Arabian Nights have their roots in the Brihatkatha tradition. The Jataka tales of the Buddhist tradition, that also has its roots in the Brihatkatha. So that the Brihatkatha definitely had a very large geographical expanse. It kind of brought together the imagination of people who inhabited this huge Akhanda Bharata, which ranged from Iran in the west and to Japan in the east, right? And its influence was much beyond that as well. Like I already mentioned, its influence is found in Greece and Rome as well.
Right.
So it coexisted. And Buddha, for example, it is said that he spoke in the Pali. Pali is also a form of Prakrit.
Okay.
Prakrit, it can be loosely put as Magadhi Prakrit. The Prakrit which was spoken in the Bihar region, the Uttar Pradesh, that Bihar, the Nepal region. So Pali is also a form of Prakrit.
Okay. So then would you say that some language like Bhojpuri that is spoken today has got roots?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, Maharashtri Prakrita was what was spoken in today's Maharashtra region.
Okay. It's Marathi now.
Which is Marathi now.
Yeah, I when I listen to Marathi, it's so close to the Sanskrit words.
Right.
And I find it so much closer to that.
See, in fact, if I have to tell an incident from my own life, several times when I'm traveling in North India or Eastern or Western parts of India, I listen to a conversation. Usually it could be in one of the formal sabhas, a person is comparing.
Yeah.
I completely understand what the person is speaking, 100%. But I wouldn't even know what is the language he's speaking in.
Yeah.
Only then somebody tells me, see, this is Odia that he's speaking.
Okay.
But I have completely understood what he has
because
said.
you know Sanskrit.
Yeah. So that unifying feature, Sanskrit as the unifying formal language across the Akhanda Bharata, that's a very interesting thing. Similarly, when I went to Gujarat, I watched a Gujarati play there. I understood it completely, although I can't actively speak the Gujarati
Use
language.
The exact words as they
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the old Malayalam movies and old Malayalam songs and also poetry of Malayalam, it's very easy to understand. So that unifying feature of this, it is not just cultural unity, but also linguistic unity, philosophical unity that the Sanskrit Bhasha has provided.
Okay.
And this is what the British also identified. If we have to divide and rule India, this backbone of India has to be destroyed. The Gurukulas have to be destroyed. You might know this famous letter of Macaulay. It's been discussed by many different scholars.
Right.
So this common thread of Sanskrit Bhasha, the Sanskrit language, has to be broken. And then we'll have to induce the English language on the in the minds of
that
the
was
people.
Actually a brilliant move, I would say.
Very, very sharp. They're very intelligent.
Yeah.
Right. So all the Samskrita Pathashalas were closed and they were banned. Not just in the British period, even post-independence. This happened because of the lineage, who were just Indians by birth, but they had all those predatory thoughts about India, the Nehru-Gandhi family, when they were ruling the country. So even then the damage
that is again whatever I've been reading is that when the Britishers came, they took a lot of Indian elite from here, and then they got themselves educated in the Oxford universities and the London universities and all that. And when people come back, obviously the ideologies have changed.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So then be ashamed of your own what do you call paganic or idolatory culture,
Absolutely.
and then all those things happened at that
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
so you're sort of it didn't get lost on its own.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Definitely
Right?
not.
Because
Yes.
the argument also comes that languages evolve
Yeah.
and it just goes away,
Definitely
fades
not.
away. Unless there is an external force,
Yes.
it doesn't go away like
Yeah.
that,
It
right?
was a strategic destruction.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
See, to add to the point, there is this misconception that the Sanskrit Bhasha was being spoken only by certain strata of the society.
Yes. Yeah. I
Definitely
wanted to come
not.
to that also.
Right? See, we have evidence for people. There is a poetess called Chandala Kanya who has written very beautiful Sanskrit verses. One of the verses is available to us today. Similarly, we
Where
have.
was she? Where did she belong
She
to?
lived in the Gupta period.
Okay.
It is also said, it is also believed that she co-authored a poetic work with Chandragupta Vikramaditya, the king.
Wow.
With him, king is a Kshatriya. And the Guptas, it is said that they belong to the Vaishya or the Shudra Varga by birth. But they became excellent Kshatriyas and they established the golden age of India, the Suvarna Yuga of India. There in that period, a Chandala Kanya co-authors a Sanskrit poetic work with the king.
When you mean Chandala Kanya, is it like a what is it? Community, or she's a prostitute, or what?
So again, loosely put, Chandalas were the people who took care of the crematoriums.
Chandala.
Yeah.
Okay.
In sometimes they were treated as though they must not enter the living quarters or the society, where the city is established, etc.
Okay.
Some people treated them as being in the outskirts only.
Outskirts.
They were sometimes not allowed to enter the city.
Okay.
But
Because of their profession.
Because of their profession.
Yeah.
But one other important point to note is that there has always been an internal correction factor in India. Whenever humans have developed this kind of tendency to separate themselves from another community or from another profession, etc., there have been scholars and there have been stalwarts, there have been these spiritual leaders who have time and again been correcting us, starting from Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Arjuna, right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he raises some of these questions.
Yeah.
I am a Kshatriya by birth. So if all the Kshatriya men die in the warfare, what is going to happen? Our Kshatriya women are going to get abducted, or they might have relationship with other men. And the purity of our blood is lost. These kinds of claims Arjuna makes.
Yeah.
But then Krishna very beautifully clarifies what the Varna means. And just assuming superiority or inferiority by birth is a very bad thought. That is
irrelevant.
Is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? So we cannot have any kind of control about how we are born, where we are born.
Correct.
What we do after we are born.
By karmas.
Yeah. What we do after we are born, that is what should matter.
Yeah.
So Krishna, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, he only gave importance to merit, not the manner in which a person was born, or what is his ancestors, etc. So this clarity has been there from time to time. Chanakya also establishes that. Swami Vidyaranya, who was instrumental in establishing the Vijayanagar Empire, he also clarifies that amply. That is seen time and again in the Indian tradition. Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, all of them have spoken about this. Anyway, coming back to the original point, Chandalas were the ones who took care of the crematoriums.
Okay.
And today, people have the illusion that Chandalas did not have access to education, especially women did not have access to education, etc.
Yeah.
But from the Vedic times, we see so many women seers who have realized certain of the Vedic mantras. And they occur multiple times in the Puranas. And even in the later period, like I was speaking about the Gupta period, we see this Chandala Kanya writing, co-authoring a work of poem with the king. And during the Vijayanagar period, we have the queen called Ganga Devi, who wrote a fantastic poem called the Mathura Vijayam. So when the city of Madurai, that kingdom of Madurai, was conquered by the Islamic rulers, her husband Veerakampanaraya, she motivates him to go and fight the war. It also almost seems like she had accompanied him on the war, witnessed the war. She gives a very ghastly description about how Muslims treated the Hindus there, the native Hindus in Madurai, and how her husband very valorously fought against those Muslim kings and reconquered Madurai, and it came under the assistance of the bigger Vijayanagar Empire.
Right.
We get to know that.
Right.
So we find women poetesses, and even in the later period, the wife of Appaya Dikshita was a very great scholar. His wife was a very great poetess. At the age of 8, she could spontaneously compose verses.
Okay.
Even as she is cleaning the outer courtyard of her house, she could spontaneously compose verses.
Right.
So like that, we see scholarship. Even today, we have poetesses. We have female scholars belonging to different strata of the society, coming from different professional backgrounds.
Correct.
We have women and men who are pursuing Sanskrit. So therefore, it is only an illusion that the Sanskrit Bhasha was limited to one section of the society or one community or one gender. Definitely not.
Right. And it is not even belonging only to the temple.
Absolutely not.
Right?
Absolutely
because,
not.
I mean, I'm sure the Gurukulas were part of the temple structure because temples were the centers of learning.
Absolutely.
And the temples had a lot of schools that they were running.
Right.
And every Vedic learning or teaching was happening in the temple.
Absolutely.
But the way the colonizers actually put it in such a way that, again, I'm reading a lot of books on the coloniality and how colonization affected everything. So in Christianity itself, in the European world, there was a fight between Roman Catholics, Protestants, and many other pagan cultures that were there. But they were all belonging to the same religion, which is Christianity. But they were fighting with the Protestant Reformation came. So they were fighting the Roman Catholics, who were the priests.
Right.
So they parallelly applied the same thing to the Brahmins here.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
The church and the church and the priests there, the clergies, they said, okay, the temple and the Brahmins here, these are the guys who are right. And then they say he is the one who is discriminating you. There could have been discrimination. I'm not denying that. There could have been discrimination because humans are humans at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But painting it in a different way that these are the guys who are discriminating your life.
Right.
So go against them.
Right.
That was the thing that they sort of established.
Absolutely.
And that is happening even today.